Welcome to Net Impact, the podcast that demystifies and explores the influence of cybersecurity and cybercrime across the world and into our lives. Brought to you by ThriveDX, the global leader in cybersecurity training. Here's your host and guide to the digital world, Fred Menachem.
Hey everyone, I'm your host, Fred Menachem, and we're here for another great episode of Net Impact. Now, this podcast is about where cybersecurity intersects with the world. But frankly, why do you need cybersecurity if not to defend against cybercrime? And that's what today's guest spends his days doing. Kind of like a superhero, he tracks down cyber criminals and brings them to justice. And I'm incredibly excited to introduce our next guest for many reasons. One, because he works for a dear friend of mine, for Miami-Dade County State Attorney Catherine Fernandez-Rundle, who I've known, God, for more years than I'd like to talk about. He's an assistant state attorney in her office, and he heads up the Cybercrime Unit. He's the Cybercrimes chief. And welcome, Stu Hedrick, to our show. It's so great to see you, man. How you doing?
Well, thank you very much. It's great to see you as well. I love the opportunity to talk about cyber crimes. I spend so much of my day working on it that why would I do anything else? But thank you very much for having me on. I'm really excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to have you, and it's funny. I'll tell a quick story. So, as I said, I've known the state attorney for more years than I'd like to remember. But really, she's a dear friend, somebody that really works hard for this community. She's a friend personally. She's done great things for this community for how many years, Stu? Has Kathy been in office? My God, it's been
since '92, I want to say.
Yeah,
more than 30 years. Yeah, when Janet Reno left to become the Attorney General for the United States.
Right, and Kathy's been there a long time. So the quick story is, I'm a bit neurotic, as you know, many people know, and for folks that are going to start watching the podcast, they'll learn quickly. So I always get a bit nervous and have anxiety. So there are times when I'll call Kathy under stress. And as cybersecurity's evolved, like I was always learning about it, didn't know a lot. So I used to call her, Kathy, I think this is going on. There's this cybercrime, whatever it was. And she'd always send me to Stu. So I used to call, I don't even know if you remember, Stu, but I called you several times. I don't know where you remember. Yeah, like this. You're like, who's this crazy kid? But
your number stayed in my phone now, so I know when you call.
Right, exactly. So I used to call him, but all joking aside, I was like, I didn't know Stu, and he was such a great resource. Besides calming me down, we started to talk a little bit, and I said to him, God, it's been a few years. I said, Stu, you have so much to offer. You know, you should teach. We need to put you on air. And there was never really an opportunity until recently. So when we started this podcast, I was like, I've got to get Stu on air. So I'm so excited to have you. Why don't you tell us for a moment? Why don't we talk a little bit about you personally? Like, I know you started with the office in 2012, I believe, but tell us about you personally. Like, how did you get into cyber? Where'd you grow up? You know, all the details of sort of, not necessarily your personal life, but some of your background, where you went to school and kind of how you fell into cyber, because I mean, certainly that wasn't a thing when you were, studying, I would imagine. Came later.
I am definitely old enough to have grown up
Right.
at least a little bit before the internet came around. So
Exactly.
I grew up in West Virginia, actually, and went to school at the University of Kentucky for undergrad. I got my degree in telecommunications. So you can kind of say, all right, we're looking at cyber a little bit right as I'm coming through college. But when it came time to go to law school, I wanted to see someplace different, see something totally unique from the community that I grew up in. And I love the place that I grew up. West Virginia is a beautiful state and a lot of wonderful people there. My family largely is still there, so I love getting back to visit. But it's got its own culture, and so when it came time to go to law school, I wanted to experience something different. And where better than Miami, right? To get a totally unique culture in the United States. I mean, I looked at schools at several other parts of the country, but Miami just has this beautiful mixing pot of just dozens of different cultures down here. So I came down here for law school, went to the U, and while at the U, I was convinced I was convinced I was going to do tax law. I had no concept of
tax law. Wow. I'm just kidding.
No, I know, right?
For my tax attorney friends out there who do very well, forgive me for doing that. Exactly. Sorry. Right. Transactional law is great business, right?
If I was any better at math, I would have stuck with it, right? Because they do a lot better than public servants. But anyways, while at the University of Miami, we have a fantastic program there, litigation skills. It's a trial advocacy program where you get to see what it's like to be an in-courtroom lawyer. And part of that program involved doing an internship in the community here. And I got my internship with the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office. And from probably the end of the first week, I realized like this is what I want to do, right? Math is fun, and getting paid to do tax law would have been a lot of fun, but prosecution, being in court, holding criminals account for what they do, getting justice for victims. I absolutely loved it, and that was the point where my fate, so to speak, was sealed. So that when I graduated, I knew I wanted to do criminal law. The Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office was my absolute top choice of places to go. When I was interviewed and got the position, I stopped interviewing everywhere else. So I was like, I've made my decision. So, but interestingly enough, given my background, I didn't come into the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office, thinking, oh yeah, cyber crimes is something I want to do, right? And I give a lot of credit to, Catherine Fernandez Rundle. She established a Cybercrimes Unit in Miami-Dade County, well before most of the rest of the country did. I think it started back in 2005. And it has, been there the entire time I've been at the office. I joined the office in 2008. So it was there, certainly, but I didn't come to the office, thinking, oh yeah, cyber crimes has got to be for me, even though, again, right, I have my background in telecommunications, everything else. Once there, right, I cut my teeth prosecuting misdemeanor cases, working my way up to more serious cases. And then after I got a couple of years experience under my belt, it came time to decide, where do I want to go from here? And at that point, I'd been around long enough to get an idea for, number one, cyber crimes is a growth industry, right? So now we're coming into 2011, 2012, and the internet, is definitely here to stay. Like I said, I'm young enough, right, to have grown up a little bit with the internet, but also old enough that, I was in high school the first time, we had AOL dial-up. So I got to see sort of the internet grow up as I, came through, my college, law school years, and into being a prosecutor. And it was clear by that point that online crime is definitely something that's on the rise and will be even more and more important as the years goes on. I also got a chance to see, right, what a cyber crimes prosecutor gets to do. And I'm not going to belabor the point too much because I've got a captive audience here, and any lawyer with a captive audience is a dangerous thing to have.
Yeah.
But I will summarize a little bit of what we get to do, because it's a little bit unique.
Sure.
Because not only do I have criminal cases, I get to go to court. I get to handle everything from the filing to the actual trial when the cases go to trial. I get to stand up and say object when witnesses are testifying, and I get to give closing statements to juries. But I have a lot of other responsibilities outside of my basic trial practice. One of the things about the internet, right, is things are changing constantly and changing quickly. Right, the Silicon Valley motto, move fast and break things. Right, one of the things they're breaking is our concepts of different legal analysis, because every time a new service comes online and people start to use it, I have to figure out a way to gather evidence from that service, because as soon as people start using it for good things, criminals start using it for bad things. So one of the cool things about my day-to-day job is getting to figure out, every time a new game, a new application, a new social media service becomes the place where people are hanging out, then we get to figure out, okay, how are we going to prosecute crimes that occur using these services, right? When Facebook and Instagram, Facebook then Instagram, I should say, because Facebook kind of came first, but when Facebook and Instagram became the popular places to go, we literally got to sit down and draft the warrants that we're going to collect evidence from these Instagram accounts, where subjects were posting the stolen items they took in the theft, or posting the firearms they used for the shooting. It shocked me at the beginning, because these bad guys, right, they'll go out, they'll do their crimes, and they'll post about it, which great for law enforcement. But we get to figure out, we actually get to put together the legal processes that we were using to collect the evidence legally from these companies. So you're really cool, to be able every couple weeks or so to put together something brand new that nobody in my office has done. We're getting evidence from a place that no one has gotten evidence from before too, and it also gets to lend towards the creative side, right? Because with the wealth of evidence that is now on the internet, now in control of various corporations and companies, there are multiple ways to go about investigating the same old crimes, right? Now, in say a homicide prosecution, it's would be shockingly rare to have a homicide case where we're not collecting digital evidence in some forms or fashion, right? Be it cell phones being used by the perpetrators, or communications back and forth between co-conspirators, or even postings made on social media threatening the victim or talking about the drug deal that caused it. So again, electronic evidence is everywhere, and so I get to also get to play like creative. Hey, where can we look for evidence for a crime?
So let me, sorry, and I'm going to backtrack just for a minute because
Absolutely.
I want to, because you said something earlier. And so when you started, and we'll get back to this, trust me, I want to talk about some cases, but when you started, what year was it you started? It was 2012, you said, when you started in the state attorney's office?
So I started state attorney's office 2008.
Okay,
Um,
2008. And
yeah,
then you're,
coming out of law
okay.
school, right in the middle of the biggest recession probably in my lifetime,
Oh,
right?
trust me, I remember it well. Of course,
Yeah,
everything went from amazing to, you know,
overnight.
to not so good, right? And then
Yeah.
obviously you saw a lot of things started to ramp up on the criminal sector, hard loans and all of that. When you walked in, what was your initial like role? It wasn't cyber, right? I mean, there wasn't really much of a. I want to talk about how the unit formed and all of
Yeah.
that.
So the unit was created, like I said, back in 2005. When I started at the state attorney's office, I started at the very entry level. My first assignment was prosecuting misdemeanor crimes in the county court,
Right.
handling DUIs and driving without a license, and misdemeanor battery cases. And it was a fantastic experience, honestly. If you want to be a trial lawyer, coming through the state attorney's office in Miami-Dade County is about the best education you can get in the country. I was getting trial experience, essentially, my second or third week being turned loose in court. So I came up through, the misdemeanor courts. I did spend some time in juvenile court, again, handling all crimes. There's not a specialized cyber unit in juvenile by any means. The felony units at the state attorney's office. So,
And then
the state attorney's office has dedicated teams for each courtroom, and they break the cases up. The more serious cases go to the more experienced people on the team. The less serious cases go to the least experienced people on the team. And so I started off. That was in front of Judge Stacy Glick.
so the cybercrime unit starts in 2005. You come in. What year did you move into the cybercrimes unit? How did that
So I came down.
manifest itself?
Yeah, I came down to the Cybercrime Unit in 2012.
Okay.
So I've been at the office about 3.5 years,
Right.
maybe close to 4 when I came down to cybercrimes. And it because a position opened, somebody that had been there, moved on to a different role in the office, and they advertised who was interested. And by that point, I knew what they did, and I felt like, yeah, this is definitely the place for me. And so I came down to join the unit, and just kind of have never left. Right, I've kind of been there, for the
Right.
last 12 years.
So speaking of that, Stu, okay, so you come in this unit now. The unit was formed, which is actually to give Kathy a lot of credit, or the state attorney, people don't know what I'm talking about, that she formed a cyber unit so early because a lot of places didn't. So when you were there, I mean, cyber was much different. What kind of crimes were you handling at that point when you
So
first started?
the kind of interesting thing, the general concept of the crimes hasn't changed a whole lot. The execution, has evolved and become more elaborate over time. But when I first started in cyber crimes, fraud, online fraud was still very much, a thing. Tax
Right.
fraud actually was the most common form of fraud that we saw during my first couple years in cyber crimes. People stealing social security numbers and filing for income tax returns. So we did a ton of those investigations, and then over time, it evolved to unemployment compensation fraud, which evolved to various schemes targeting individuals, like grandparent scams, and other types of more personalized fraud. But fraud has always been
It's like,
something that was part of cybercrime. So it's been interesting to watch, right, what the crime du jour is. Like what is the fraud that's in this season,
so
right?
what's
It's
in this
been
season? What's the
so
fraud in this season?
so in this season,
Yeah.
cryptocurrency scams
Oh yeah, we're
are big, and grandparent scams, which is
horrible.
folks targeting elderly people, pretending to be lawyers or bondsmen, saying, "Oh, your grandson was arrested," and needs someone to post his bond, can you please FedEx $10,000 cash to this address, right? So, it's a really heartbreaking scam, and honestly, you every time we get to catch one of these guys and prosecute them for it, right? It's a good day, but yeah, that's the biggest things that we're seeing right now. But again, if you ask me in 18 months, there'll be another scheme that the bad guys have drawn up, and that's one of the sort of bad things that comes with a connected world is that when someone figures out a particularly effective scam, the rest of the bad guy community are quick to pick up on it because they find out about it instantly. So that's why I think we see trends in scams as opposed to always just being all different types. We see different scams come in and out of fashion because something becomes particularly effective, and
Right.
that's what all the bad guys want to do until law enforcement catches up, and then something else.
So you're working, obviously, I'm assuming the feds and the state attorney's office work closely together because a lot of these cases kind of fall under, right, under jurisdiction of really both entities, I would imagine, right?
Yeah. So
Yeah.
so we, my office, actually my unit specifically, works with every law enforcement agency active in the county. That's all of our, state law enforcement agencies, the sheriff's office, the individual municipalities, right? Their police departments. We work together with them, but we also work together with the Miami branches of the FBI, the Secret Service, Homeland Security investigations, and even our, law enforcement people, the girls and guys that are actually doing these investigations day in
Yeah.
day out, they all work together, hand in hand. The example I like to use, the Cybercrimes Unit for the Miami-Dade Police Department
Big side.
is
Great. They do a great job. One of the biggest in the
oh, they
country,
do
I
they
think,
do
right?
fantastic work.
Yeah.
We work a lot with them, and their detectives are nation leading in some of the investigations they're doing, but they're co-located with U.S. Secret Service field office in
Okay.
Miami-Dade County, so they're literally in the same building, with a federal partner. So yeah, we're working consistently, with everybody, and then also working together with our colleagues at the U.S. Attorney's Office, right? The federal prosecutors. We also coordinate on and determine who's got the best jurisdiction claim to a case, who's got the best tools. Some cases actually more time in state court than federal court. In some cases, the reverse. Some cases, the feds have higher sentencing ranges than the state does. So there is a lot of sharing of information in cases where we can, because we want to make sure that we're getting the right result at the end of the day, and we want to make sure we're using the best tools to do it.
So, but obviously, sometimes, so it falls under jurisdiction. So you're saying, right, depending on the sentencing guidelines sometimes. So obviously, if there's stronger sentencing guidelines, it might fall under the federal, not necessarily jurisdiction, but it might go into federal court, or there could be charges that go into both courts, I imagine, federal and state, right? At
Yeah, I
times.
mean, we
Yeah.
have defendants that have cases running through both systems. We have defendants because a lot of circumstances, right? If some of the criminal activity there is state of Florida jurisdiction for, some of the criminal activity there is U.S. Federal jurisdiction for, and sometimes there's overlap. Sometimes both the state and the feds have legal jurisdiction over a particular criminal episode, and so it's all just what is the best solution for a given situation, right? We want to make sure that we're getting the prosecution to the fullest extent that's appropriate, right?
So why don't we just dive into, and I don't know, I mean, I know how it works. Right? Obviously, you can't talk about cases that are still, pending or whatever, but there's got to be some, I know for a fact there's been some significant cases, some high level cases that have happened here in the county, certainly after those Champlain towers, what were they called, collapsed. I know there was an issue then. Uh, there's been a lot of issues. So any cases you want to talk about that kind of really stand out for you, and maybe tell us a little bit about how that all manifested itself, whatever you're allowed to talk about.
I will be able to talk, right, probably in broad strokes. I probably
Yeah,
can't too many
right.
details about some of these because a lot of these cases did involve victims that I
Sure.
want to protect their privacy as well. I mean, everything I
100%.
do ultimately is public record, and if you wanted to go down to the courthouse and start reading through stacks of arrest forms, you're legally entitled to do it. But there's there are
Okay.
victims involved that I'm going to try to protect their privacy. The Champagne Plain Towers is a case that is still pending. That is, there's a fraud investigation leading to arrests and current prosecution. So unfortunately, I can't talk much about it other than to say that law enforcement, working together with, the state attorney and working together with my unit, we're able to track down the fraudsters that were trying to profit off of it. And,
So
now we're hoping to prosecute them,
I'm
hoping
going to
to
stop
get
you
a
for sorry, I'm going to stop you for a second just so people know what we're talking about, right? So you want to talk about a little bit about the Champlain Towers, what happened, and I can talk a little bit about sort of the fraud that came from that, just from, an outsider knowing, because most people wouldn't even know about that are outside of Miami-Dade.
probably the biggest civil tragedy in, Miami-Dade County as long as I've lived here, right? I've lived here almost 20 years, and it's the
It's got to be
the
one of
biggest
the
tragedy
worst.
I have seen. I wasn't here for Andrew, right? That was
Oh,
before my
no,
time
it's
here.
pretty bad as
So,
well.
but definitely as long as I've been here. And one of the unfortunate upshots is that
That's
the criminal element will seek to take advantage of anything they can take advantage of. And so there was some fraud that came out of the aftermath of the tower
yeah.
collapse
They
that
took
we assisted in investigating, right? We got really good detectives from the Aventura Police Department, from the Surfside Police Department, that we worked together with on this, that really did fantastic investigation work, and ultimately resulted in arrests of the people that we have alleged, right? Because it is still prior trial, we have alleged we're responsible for the fraud, and we are actively prosecuting. So any event, right, that bad actors can find out about, is information that they can attempt to use to commit a fraud, right? So a lot, I would say the vast majority of the fraud that I see comes from bad actors contacting people with just enough information about their real lives or their real business situation to convince them that they are who they are claiming to be, right? You think about your business email compromise is something we see a lot of. And in those situations, the bad guy sets up a fake website that close but not exactly matches a real business's website. And they create an email address at
right.
their fake website. They email somebody from, a company that business does business with and says, hey, we've changed our bank. We've got a new routing number for your payment to us this month. Please wire it to this new account. And email has supplanted the phone call and the in-person business meeting for handling business work. So the person receiving that already knows that a lot of my work gets done via email. This person knows that we do business with the company. This person knows that we've got a payment due this month, and it's totally reasonable that they switched banks. So again, it doesn't take a ton of information, but it does take a little bit of information to fool a lot of people.
So on that note, Stu, because I know you and I spoke about it, I know you know, there's so many online scams. So give me, share some other examples of online scams. You talked about one right now, and talk about how people could avoid falling victim to them. I know that there were a lot of things you want to talk about as related to that. Let's start there.
I could go on for more than an hour just about fraud, right? I could talk as long as you all can
Right,
record. But
right,
when it boils down to it, right, the most important thing when it comes to keeping yourself safe, the most important things to tell your friends and family, hey, this is what the best advice I can give you is to pause whenever you get something, right, asking you to send money or you know change something about your account. Take a pause, right? Because the tactics that most of these subjects are using, you think boiler room, stock sales back in the
sure.
80s, right? High pressure, very fast, very pushy. This needs to be done right now. Your money is going to be emptied from your bank account in seconds. If you don't, follow what we're saying, right? Like they really try to pressure you, and the same thing comes across in these emails. But the first and most important thing, like pause, take a breath, right? Let your adrenaline, subside so that your thinking brain can take over. And then truly think about, okay, what am I looking at here? Nothing is a replacement for a phone call, and nothing is a replacement for a phone call that you make, right? This is a point that I really want to highlight here, because one of our scams right now is involving a phone call coming from the bad guy to a victim, and on the victim's phone it shows Wells Fargo is calling me.
Right.
Wells Fargo's phone number appears
What?
in the caller ID. The phone says all this is coming directly from Wells Fargo. And the simple fact is that you can download for free right now if you wanted to an application to your iPhone that lets you change your caller ID to anything you wanted to show.
It's
Right?
very easy to do, unfortunately. And in fact, I
Very
mean,
easy
I,
to do.
I remember in the old days when we used to make prank calls. I don't know how, there used to be so many ways to do that. No, we did. We used to make, it's scary. So keep going. Okay, so somebody changes it, right? So
Yeah.
I'm somebody, right? I pick up my phone. I see the caller ID, Wells Fargo. Somebody calls up, and then what do they say?
I mean,
Let's reenact this, Stu.
yeah.
What do we
So
do? All
so
right, come on.
so the pitch is,
Yeah.
you know, there has been a breach in your Zelle account, right? Zelle is
Right.
the application. There's been a breach to your Zelle account, and your checking account balance is about to be completely drained to send money out. We need you to log into your bank account, by clicking this link, and then they'll text it to you, and then we're going to ask you for the code that comes back when you click on it. Right? And so Wells Fargo's on the phone with you. That's what it shows in your caller ID. And they're saying, we need you to click here to log in. And we need you to read the code that comes back to your phone, once you've clicked on the link. And what do you think the link was?
The
It's
link is
the password reset link to your Wells
exactly.
Fargo account that the bad guys are also currently sitting in front of. And that code that you get is the code that Wells Fargo sent to your cell phone to say, is this you trying to reset your password? And that's the code the bad guy types into the account. And then your account balance actually does get drained, right? This is a shockingly logical stream of events, right? You think about it, and it's hard to say, wow, that seemed like an obvious fraud from the get-go.
It's very happened so quickly. Now, let me ask you this: they're getting so much better and better at this, and I'm pretty on I'm pretty on high alert, and I've almost been tricked a couple times. I haven't been, but I just I saw something that looks so good.
Me too.
I mean, and I'm
Right?
pretty good, so I know that. But when that happens, and I want to get back to something, but in a moment. But is their money protected?
No.
Like, I mean, it's not, right?
No, FDIC does not insure fraud, and your banks are probably not going to refund you for transactions that you yourself authorized. Right? If you provided the passcode to the bad guys, your bank may decline to restore the money to you. There's other scams where they trick you into sending the Zelle transaction out.
Yeah,
right? Your bank's not going to refund you for that. And so this is why, my number one piece of advice: take a breath. First thing, take a breath.
Okay.
Recognize your bank is never going to call you and demand that you do something in this instant, right? Banking doesn't work at that speed. Even
of course,
though it looks like when I
unless they
Zelle,
want your money, and not they're going to give it to you.
Yeah.
I mean, if they want it, they might work at that speed, right? Exactly.
correct. Even though when I pull up my
Right.
Zelle and I send $50 to my mother to help buy a birthday gift for my dad, right? It looks like the money transfers instantly. The back end of all that takes days. So the speed of banking is not instantaneous. So take a breath. The second thing is you cannot trust that the phone, the email is who they say it is. What you can trust is hanging up, picking up your phone again, finding the actual customer service number for Wells Fargo and dialing them, right? Then you've reached Wells Fargo because you're the one that pulled the number off the back of your debit card, right? Pull your debit card out of your wallet, that 800 number on the back, you call that number, and then you can find out, was there really something going on with my account? And the answer was no, because your bank would never call you with that kind of stress. Same thing, whenever you're being asked, to send stuff out, right? Your immediate answer needs to be, not until I speak to the person that I think I'm sending it to, right? If your son, your grandson truly was, taken into custody on the other side of the country, and someone needs to post his bail, you're not going to be asked to FedEx $10,000 in cash.
Sure.
Right? You're not going to be asked to pay his bail in Google Play or Apple iTunes gift cards, because that's not how the bail system works, right? If you honestly think that your grandson's in trouble, hang up the phone, pick it up, dial his mom, dial his dad, dial him, dial someone that you can get in touch with and find out, is this person claiming to be my grandson, or claiming to represent my grandson, like, really legit? And you're going to find out, right, that the answer is no. So again, pause, break the cycle of that boiler room, pressure trying to trigger you to act without thinking. And then common sense, right? Common sense rules. None of the things I'm suggesting here, right, are brilliant deductions, right? It's
No,
all,
but
hey, yeah.
sorry, go ahead.
I was just gonna finish up. It's all,
Oh,
hey, like what would any person think to do if you actually took a second and thought about it?
and you were talking about grandkids, so in a moment, I want to talk a little bit about some, issues as it relates to children because they're huge issues. But before
Yeah.
I get there, I wanted to say, look, you're talking about that. There's so many scams. Let's talk for just one moment with safety tips that you give. Like, for example, somebody sends an email, right? It's so I see these all day long, right? These emails that claim to come from, whether it's Wells Fargo, could be from anywhere, so your Amazon accounts closed, whatever it is, and they look so real. I mean, I certainly like, what do you tell people? How can they obviously recognize that the email isn't real, right? It's not really your bank. And what should they do? I always say just go directly to the website, make sure it's right. Don't click the link in the email. But what's the safety tip there?
That's actually the best safety tip I can give,
Well, thank
right?
you very much.
Whatever email you got, there's
Hey,
no reason to click the link there and not
right,
just open up a new browser tab and
right.
type in Amazon.com, type in, Chase.com, type in whatever yourself. I mean, there's some technical things. You can sometimes, highlight your little mouse cursor over
Right.
top of their email address and see that when it actually like highlights up, it's not the
Jo
Amazon.com that
right,
showed up originally. It
yeah,
is, Nozama dot,
yeah, right, or John
Southeast.
Small said AO right,
Correct.
exactly, AOL, yeah,
Correct.
exactly,
So
right,
you can check
right,
stuff that way, and it's kind of fun, like, it entertains this sort of, like,
right, of
Sherlock
course,
part of your
right,
brain. But like, I'm gonna do some research here, let me look and see. Um, but and also recognize that, these companies, they don't send out, emails like that. They don't send out emails saying that, your account has been suspended for fraud. Click here to unsuspend it, right?
it's a
You know,
numbers game. They do a
the emails
numbers
they
game, right?
send,
They
of
right,
course,
yeah,
of
it's
course. Anyways, without getting too much into the weeds, truly 100% the best piece of advice you can possibly give is what you started with. Yes, always
yeah,
navigate to the website yourself. Don't click the links, and you recognize that if my Amazon account was suspended, every time I got one of those emails, right? I would,
be
number
right.
one, I'd have a lot more money in my pocket because I'd never be shopping on Amazon. But part of what I do in cyber crimes, we investigate and prosecute those cases as well. And those are truly heartbreaking cases, and some of the most serious stuff that we deal with. The fraud is absolutely super important, and I don't mean to make it sound like it's
No,
not,
but this is
right?
like
But child exploitation is
it
kind of even a little closer, right? A little closer to heart. And yes, we're starting to see AI enter that realm. But again, our laws have kept pace. It is
uh,
illegal to trade material, whether it's a living child or an AI generated child, and
It's
that
it's when you started talking about that, I got a little bit upset, and the reason being is because I grew up in this community as well, and well, you didn't grow up here, but you've been here a long time, and I worked in foster care, and I remember. That's why I want to get a little bit into this without getting too deep, but I remember all
it's
the
okay.
prostitution going on in the group homes, and it's just Kathy obviously is so engaged in this stuff as well, and that's why I wanted to
Yeah,
talk a little bit about. First of all, it's horrific what happens all over the country, but we certainly, unfortunately, in Miami-Dade County, we see a lot of it: the human trafficking, the prostitution, the all of those horrific things. And what I want to know is, in general, first of all, how does I mean, I assume that cybersecurity is playing a role, and let's talk for just a few minutes and then get into some more hopefully lighter stuff. But how is cybersecurity and those kind of crimes playing a role in that world, the human trafficking, the child prostitution, all the other things we're talking about? And once we're done talking about that, how can parents effectively protect their children? I guess I want to know.
absolutely. So first, this is another area that I have to give our state attorney a ton of credit because we have a
100%.
human trafficking unit that she put together
Amazing.
specifically for child prostitution and forced prostitution. So another area where we're already ahead of the game, and that's a unit that I work together with a lot, right? And so as you can imagine, the cyber world, the internet is where a lot of the front end of these transactions occur. And so we're working together with investigators to make sure that they know where these ads are being posted. They know where these chat sites are being set up to connect potential Johns with people pimping out the girls, and we make
So
sure that
just let me stop you. Understand you're talking about Johns are looking for children, right? Is
yeah,
basically what you're
Johns that are
talking about. I
looking
just
for
want to be
children. Yes,
wow. And so this
right.
happens online,
Yeah,
you're
this
saying.
this happens online a lot. A lot of these situations are originally booked online. The pimp will put up an ad,
Right.
with or without real pictures of the victim, but recruiting Johns, and then they'll communicate using some form of electronic service, either a direct message on one of the social media applications, or even sometimes basic old fashioned text messaging, phone to phone, and they'll negotiate the details, and then the bad guys show up. So we're working right with law enforcement to make
No, I
sure that they're able to get evidence from the services that they need to put together these cases. But probably the most important thing that cyber crimes can help with, or cyber techniques can help with in these cases, is actually locating these victims, because a lot of them are
but
runaways. A lot of them have left maybe unhappy home lives, or whatever the original story was, but a lot of them still have loving mothers and fathers, and they were tricked, conned by someone they met on the internet. Oh, I'm going to go to Miami and visit my boyfriend. So we've got the entire range, but inevitably, right, they're all carrying phones in their pockets. They're all having to utilize some sort of internet services. Some have better access than others, but we can use these services to help us locate these victims, and hopefully get them out of the
and
situation before a lot bad things happen. So that to me, even more satisfying than making a case. And trust me, it is satisfying to make a case against
clear
the adults that are doing this, but even more satisfying than making a case is actually tracking down and being able to rescue one of the little girls or little boys
yeah,
that have been forced into this. So
when you're helping them, right, with obviously because you have to help find them, that falls into the cyber, in the cyber jurisdiction, falls into your fiefdom in a sense. What kinds of how are you doing that? Like how are you helping find them? Like what
I mean,
without giving
again,
your secrets away? What? Right.
yeah, most
Mm.
most of my assistance is just very high level, because the prosecutors
Right.
there, they're experts. They could be cyber crimes prosecutors at this point too, because
Sure.
it's how connected it is. So really, we're helping once we identify you know social media handles, or identify any other online services they're using. We can work with those services to help track down. I don't want to get too much into the
No,
weeds,
no, that's
because
of
I
course
could
not.
I could I
Right.
could go on another 2 hours
Right.
about various investigation techniques, but essentially,
No, we
we're
right.
we're we're
Right.
all leaving footprints on the internet. If you use any type of electronic service, you're leaving
There
footprints in some form or fashion. And we try to figure out every source of footprints, whether we're tracking down a bad guy or trying to rescue a victim of human trafficking. We're looking for every source of footprints we can find, and then again, utilizing proper legal process, collecting that evidence, and following it to
and
the end. A lot of cyber crimes investigation. This is something I found over the years. A lot of cyber crimes investigation, really is termed like, really is executed like good old fashioned, boot sole police work, right?
yeah,
So
sure.
when investigators are investigating a case, they're not tap tap tap. It's not like TV, tap 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 on the
Right.
computer.
Right.
It's we got the phone here, tap 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 tap. We tapped into the surveillance camera here. Like in the real world, these investigations are, we find one identifier, we track down what the company knows about that person. Maybe we get an IP address, maybe we get a phone number. Okay, so we use legal process to get the
Right.
IP address information or the phone number information, and we keep following the breadcrumbs back, right, to the source. And when you're doing that, from multiple angles, we're looking at your email, we're looking at your Instagram handle, we're looking
And
at your
that's
TikTok handle, right? If you're attacking it from multiple angles, you get enough of them, the breadcrumbs start to coalesce on one point. Yeah.
moving on to something more serious. That not that that serious is children. So we talked a lot about children. So what are your tips? Online safety, all of that. I know that you know that you do this often and you have a lot of tips. So I'm going to leave that to you. of how to protect children, in
Yeah,
instances like that,
because
cybersecurity.
you,
Yeah.
we do see a lot of exploitation cases where the bad guys are logging on to the game of the week, and trying to find teenagers or even younger kids to chat with, and ultimately transition to doing less savory things. Both kids games and games that adults and kids both play, the bad actors are on there, and they're using it as a means to to locate it and target victims. And so one of the things that I get to do, again, one of the cool things that comes from this job, is I occasionally get to talk to parents about cyber crimes issues, about what we see, how it affects their kids, and what we recommend. And so my number one tip to them: there is absolutely no replacement for knowing your kids. No one else in the world knows your kids better than you do. No one else knows their moods, their day-to-day activities. No one else knows how they typically are better than a parent does, right? And so if you notice something off that needs to set the alarm bells tingling. And being a former teenage boy, right,
Okay.
I realized that hormonal changes, teenagers
Right.
get moody, all that's a thing.
Sure.
Right, but my parents did too, and my parents also knew when something truly was wrong.
Yeah, of
right?
course. Right.
And so that's first and foremost, trust your instincts, right? If something starts to feel off, then you need to start answering questions, which brings us into number two. Number two is maintaining an open line of communication, right? Whatever you need to do to make sure that your kids feel confident and feel safe talking to you about things, right? So again, when I grew up, cell phones flat out weren't a thing. Actually, the first cell phone my family got, I was in high school, right? And so one of the other things I could do with my job is sometimes talk to high school kids, right? And so every time I get a chance to talk to high school kids, I ask them, how old were you when you got your first cell phone, right?
How old?
And now, I'm hearing, 7 and 8 years old,
Oh my
right?
God.
We're talking about, second and third graders, are getting their first cell phones, right? And so what is a cell phone? It's a really great way to stay connected to your friends. It's also a great way for bullies to bully, right? And so that's something else as a parent you need to recognize, that, bullying on the internet, is just as serious as bullying in real life. But also it is a portable camera that connects to the internet, right? And so the reality is that, there is a ton of pressure on high school kids and even middle school kids, to take, intimate pictures of themselves and share them with their, boyfriend at the minute, right? I can remember being, 13 years old, right, and being in love and knowing that I'm going to marry her, right?
Right. But we
100%.
didn't have all of those technology though. I don't know how old
Right?
you are. I certainly didn't have that. Right.
Yeah, I didn't, again,
Right.
no camera
We
phones when I was
we
growing
actually
up.
had to have conversations with each other. Right. We had to learn, oh no, it's true, right? I mean, we actually had to talk.
Well, now for a minute we had
right.
pagers, so the conversations were really long and drawn out. But 7, 8, 9-year-olds now have
Right.
a phone, have a camera with an internet connection, and the hormones that they experience are the same hormones that we experienced when we went through middle school and high school, right?
Sure.
And
But
so obviously you need to have the talk with your kids, when they get that first cell phone, about what they can and can't do. But you also need to feel, make them feel comfortable, talking to you about things when things do happen, right? Because we do see cases where, classmate or even, an unknown adult, will manage to get their hands on, pictures that, the kid, knows they weren't supposed to take. Please don't tell my parents. That's what we see when these cases come to us. We get the text chat.
please don't.
Please don't tell my parents. Please don't tell my parents. I'll send you money, or I'll send you more pictures or more videos, right? Because
Oh,
they're
you're
careful.
talking about not to the prosecutor's office. You're saying to the attackers.
The bad guys.
I'm
To the bad
to the
guys.
bad guy, the attackers, whatever. Right.
Yeah,
Okay.
the
So
bad
they're
guy will get their
not-
hands on the stuff. And so, I stress the parents. I mean, I don't know what the magic solution is, and I'm sure it's different for every child. But you need to
think it's
make your
tough.
kid, feel comfortable enough that they can bring something like that to you, because, yeah, the best solution, and what I tell kids, the best way to make sure that your material never gets out there is to not have it in the first place.
Not do
And
it. I
if
mean,
you're not
that's-
18, it's illegal, right?
Right.
Make sure that everyone understands that, even if your boyfriend is also 16, it is still illegal for you guys to take and share this material. So I can preach this to till I go hoarse, and maybe I will go hoarse on this conversation. But the most important thing is have a a way to, have a way to identify what's going on, when something, bad does happen, right? So maintain an open line of communication with your kids. Number three, anything that connects to the internet needs to be in a public space in the home. If you've got a video game system, it connects to the internet. It needs to be in the living room. There's no reason that it needs to be in especially a younger child's bedroom. This applies to a lot of stuff that's not necessarily obvious. Obviously, the tablet has Wi-Fi, the phone has got two sources of internet, right? But the Nintendo Switch, the handheld game system, right? That's got an internet connection too, right? The Xbox, the PlayStation, they have internet connections, right? So anything that connects to the internet, again, it makes sense to adjust to how old your kids are. Obviously, the older they get, the more leeway they have to be given. But especially if you've got younger kids, there's no reason for any of these things to be left in the kids' bedrooms. And the same thing with a cell phone, right? If your kid has a cell phone, and look, if every other kid in the class has one in the third grade class, and your kid's the only one without it, it's hard to say, well, I'm never going to give my child a cell phone. So that, I understand the reality here, but
So
for a certain while, right, for elementary age kids, for middle school age kids, and even younger high school kids, right, there's no reason they need the phone to go to bed with them. Mom and dad, it's bedtime, 9 o'clock, 10 o'clock, 8 o'clock, whatever it is, the phone stays with us tonight, right?
what's tip number 4, man? Go ahead.
Tip number 4, rely on software or electronic solutions only if you believe that you know more about computers than your kid does, right? So the router, the time limits, I'm putting the nanny software on the phone, those can all be effective, but so long as you know more about the system than the kid does, because, right, it would have been difficult, even in my household to lock me out of things, because, and especially, once I got older, because I could operate a lot of the stuff better than my parents could.
Sure.
And then tip number 5.
By the way, just really notice, if I was growing up with, you said tip number 4, I would have like 17 hotspots hidden where nobody would even know. I mean, my parents would never, right? Think about it. Like a freaking closet full of hotspots. Yeah, exactly. All right. So tip number 5.
And then tip number 5, right? It's a tip that comes from one of my friends that does forensic examinations, right? And so he told both of his kids growing up that your phone is subject to me dumping it at any time, right? Using the actual police forensic dumping tools that can find all the stuff on the phone. So they knew he meant business. But what I mean from that, right, is you need to, again, age appropriate, but you need to be going through what your kids are doing.
Yeah.
Right. You need to be watching them when they're playing games, at least a lot of the time. You need to be checking their phone if they've got a phone, scrolling through stuff, right? They need to understand that privacy is a process. It's not something you're entitled to at 8 years old when you get your first cell phone. So you need to make sure that you're engaged with the things that they're using online, because when we see cases, the best cases that I get are the cases where mom or dad found something before things got out of hand, right? Found something before things had progressed to sending material that they're being blackmailed into, or progressed to the point where they're being forced to even show up. So the earlier that you can spot it as a parent, the better. And so that means that I'm going to be looking at your phone once a week, and you need to understand that it's a random check, so you can't predict it. And delete all your bad stuff like, Thursday night, right? Like I may show up at any random time, but keep an eye right on what your kids are doing. Make sure that what games are they playing, what are they doing on those games, because again, as the parent, right, you're the one that knows them the best. You're the one that spends the time with them, and you're the one that they need to feel comfortable coming to, because the bad guys out there, they do not care, right? They don't have any sense for the damage they inflict. So we want to get it cut off before we reach that point.
First of all, those are great tips, and I think that I hope that you're spending time, and we'll talk about this after, around the county, really talking to parents. It's so important. I don't know how much of that's going on in the Dade County Public Schools, Miami-Dade County Public Schools. I hope that it is. I think these conversations with parents are so important. It's something we could talk about offline. But before we finish, I wanted to ask you, because this is such an important question. When I had my friend, Palm Beach County State Attorney Dave Ehrenberg on, we talked about this. And, how do we balance the need for privacy with the need for law enforcement to access information? I don't need to get deep into detail. They can't get into an Apple phone. There's a terrorist, a sex trafficker. etc. It's a complicated scenario, right? Because on one hand, we want to protect our privacy. On the other hand, you want to take down, degenerate, horrific criminals. So you may not have the magic answer, but what do you think?
So I'm gonna give you two answers. First, we're gonna start from what we've got now, and then the second part will be what could we see develop, right? So
Okay.
for where we're at now, privacy is actually something that I think about and even lose sleep about from time to time in my day-to-day job, because part of what I do is help law enforcement gather evidence, right? Part of what
Right.
I do is help law enforcement get contents of a subject's Facebook account, or get a history of cell site locations, things like that. And so, number one, the vast majority of things we do, my work is being checked by the court, right? My work is being submitted to the judge in the form of a request for a search warrant to issue, and a judge is signing off and saying, yes, we are balancing privacy interests against law enforcement's legitimate interests to investigate cases. And we also take strides to minimize the data that we collect in these warrants. We don't just go in and, yes, this account was used to send a threatening message to a victim, so we want every communication ever from this Instagram, right? So we don't do that. We narrow down the data that we do seize when we do seizures, to make sure that we're only collecting the limited amount of data that we need to potentially prove the case, right? So privacy, I actually think is super important, and I think it's important to make sure that we are treating privacy properly. One, because the courts are going to weigh in anyways, and if we're doing stuff that the courts disapprove of, we're going to be losing cases. But number two, right, so much of everyone's lives are online now. That the old concept of privacy not covering anything you ever shared doesn't apply anymore, right? So every time I get asked to do something new, some new means of gathering evidence, new service to get evidence from, or new data to ask for, we make sure we go through and say, hey, what are the privacy implications here? What can we do to limit what we get to only what we need for the case? And it's not just me making those calls. I sit down with a lot of really bright prosecutors, and sometimes even the state attorney herself, right, to discuss things about how we should attack issues. But making sure that data collection by our law enforcement partners is being done with an eye towards privacy in mind is something that I take very seriously. I think it's super important.
So, Stu, before we go and sign off, tell me, how can folks get more information from Miami-Dade County? Is there a website? Is there a fraud line? You probably weren't prepared for this though, so might not be. But is there a way that? No, I'm sorry. I'm throwing you for a loop right now, right? But no, if seriously, if somebody, detects some fraud or there's something else, how do they reach out to you folks?
So I'm gonna have to do a pitch for the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office.
Yeah, exactly. I was trying to do that. I was trying to lead you on there, man.
Miami-Dade
Come on,
State
right?
Attorney's Office website has got a link, for Cybercrime Unit.
SA15? No, is that right or no? No.
It's MiamiSAO.com. So
okay, no, I said SA15.
www.miamisao.com. You
go
there.
Say it again. www. Go ahead. I'll let you say it.
MiamiSAO.com.
You heard that, folks. www.miamisao.com.
And yes, so if you go to our website, you can actually get information on a lot of the work that the office does, a lot of the work that our various specialized units do. The human trafficking unit, for example, has got a page on the website, but there is a page for the Cybercrime Unit. And if you go to that page, there is a list of federally available, state available information about how to report cyber crimes, where to look to see what current fraud is going on, and what are some of the tips published by the government? Because it turns out that I'm not the only person who's thought about this question, and there are a lot of a lot of other agencies with very good people that have also come up with good ideas and good tips and good rules to follow. And the more education you get, the better prepared you are. So so go to our website, go to the Cyber Crimes tab, and the links to the best places to go to report things and get information is there. Also, I do want to stress, because this is a question that comes to us a lot. If you think you have been the victim of a crime, the first step is always to report it to your local police department.
Right, of course.
Cybercrime, victim of stalking, victim of fraud, victim of solicitation of a minor because the bad guy was talking to your child, whatever it is, the first step is always to report it to your local law enforcement agency. Even if it turns out, right, that our bad guy was in Georgia, the state, or Georgia the country, right? the first step is always to report it to your local police department, because that's where the investigation process starts. And they're also responsible for keeping track. How we know that grandparents scheme and crypto schemes are the current fraud is because police departments have been collecting reports, and that's the reports they've seen the highest highest reports come in on. So it's important for a lot of reasons, but that's also the best way to get the investigation started with your case.
Yeah, and I think that, and I think it's really important to, if you feel like, you suspect that there's any kind of cybercrime, especially when it happens to do with children and this and that, if you feel your instinct, just go report it. It's better,
Yeah.
it's better to do it than, than not to do it. And I think that's so important, right?
When it comes to children, there's a million reasons to err on the side of caution and not a single good reason to just say, oh, well, we're not sure.
If you can leave something, Stu, we're going to do this again. Last 30 seconds, anything you want to leave, anything.
So I want to recognize, right, the people that I work with. City of Miami, has a great Internet Crimes Against Children unit. Miami-Dade County Sheriff's Office has a fantastic Internet Crimes Against Children unit. Miami Beach, I can go through every agency in the county, but there are a lot of really, really good detectives, who spend their entire days doing nothing but investigate, people that are, sexually exploiting children online or trading sexual exploitation material online. And I'm working with those folks constantly. So I want to recognize the work they do. And I mean, federal agencies as well, right? HSI agents, US agents, we're working with law enforcement at all levels. And they deserve a lot of recognition, because the people that they are catching and that we're prosecuting, number one, it's impossible without them. I could not be handling a single case in court without the work that they put into it. I would not be bringing a single one of these bad guys to justice without the work they put in. But it's also has had such an impact on the children here and the children worldwide, right? Because when it comes to these types of crimes, the victims are everywhere, and the only battle against it is to go after the people that are selling it and trading it, and that's what they do day in, day out.
On that note, thank you so much. I know my producer is about to shut this down, waving the hands like she probably wants to go out. She got a family, but thank you for the insightful conversation. It was great. I'll see you again. We're going to do this again. Look forward to talking further and doing some stuff together in the community and talking about cyber, bringing you to meet some of our students and that sort of thing. But we will definitely do that. For folks out there, stay tuned. There's more coming from us. We've got great guests coming in the future. Please make sure you connect with us by following ThriveDX on YouTube, on LinkedIn, on Twitter and Instagram, and all of our other channels. And we'll look forward to seeing you all again for the next episode. And Stu Hedrick, thank you so much again for doing this. It's been a blast. And we'll see you soon.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for having me on. Any chance that I get to talk about this, right, I take advantage of it, because education, I think, is the most important thing. I would love to be put out of a job, and if I could teach enough people, right, maybe we could see a real dent in cyber crimes. But again, very, very much enjoyed this. Thank you very much for having me.
My pleasure. Today's podcast is brought to you by ThriveDX, the global leader in cybersecurity training. Now, are you interested in learning more about becoming a cybersecurity professional or how to better secure the future of your organization? Visit thrivedx.com for more details, and make sure you follow us on YouTube, LinkedIn, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter, for updates, info, and more. And before we go, I want to thank everyone who helped make this possible. My dynamic executive producer, Michael Seth Prell. Our producer and publicist, Carrie Ann Hilton. The design and original music was done by Gilly Fox, Ksenia Aron, and Moro Khanna. Our editors, Modi Nahum and Amit Zach. Our advisor, Yoni Neiman, and our manager, Leora Zeri. And the entire operation was overseen by Eugenio Robino Writer at ThriveDX. Thanks to this incredible team. Thanks everyone for joining us. This is Fred Menachem, 0 to 60 and nothing in between. We'll see you in the next episode.